Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kevin.
I'm really happy to be talking to you and to the Southern Dharma community.
Well, it's great to have you here today. We're in the middle of this holiday season and on Giving Tuesday in particular. And
Uh-huh.
so, for those listening at home, we hope that this is really an opportunity to just reconnect with your practice and bring it into your life, whether that's at a holiday gathering or when you're out and about. So I'd love to first introduce everyone. This is Kevin. If you have not had the chance to sit with Kevin before, um, he's been at Southern Dharma many times. And Kevin, I know that you are a Buddhist author, teacher, and really a leader in the mindful recovery movement. And you've written multiple books: One Breath at a Time, Buddhism,
Yeah.
12 Steps, Living Kindness. And so today I know that Living Kindness is one of your most recent endeavors. So I'm wondering if maybe you'd like to guide us in a practice, and then maybe we can chat about that. Sounds like a great topic for the holiday times.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I just want to put in a plug too for the Giving Tuesday and the giving in general to Southern Dharma. That uh, it's such a precious place. That's of all the Dharma centers where I've taught, it's the one that is most careful with money, actually. It's really affordable and works with an incredibly small staff that's amazingly efficient. And it's a really, really special place that really needs support, and in a part of the country where there isn't a lot of Dharma, available. So for sure, it's a much better thing to focus on than going to the big box store and purchasing a new television, which actually I'm thinking about getting, but only after I give some money to Southern Dharma.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just sit for a couple minutes and um, and just get grounded a little bit. I usually close my eyes when I sit, although you don't have to. But if you don't, then you're just going to be staring at me, which isn't really a great way to meditate, I don't think so. And just relaxing into the body and feeling into the heart. And perhaps reflecting on the benefits that you've gotten from Dharma practice. We live in this very materialistic world, and to have a way of stepping out of that is a real gift. Softening, opening. What I like to add to my practice is a smile, just a little turning up of the corners of the mouth. It's amazing how smiling can actually energize the body, brighten the mind. Now just try breathing with a smile. The mind takes us away, and we come back. In fact, as we watch the mind over and over with its silly excursions, can actually find something to smile about in that, to take our mind less seriously. I often find myself laughing at my own thoughts. Right.
It was really nice to call a smile into the practice.
Yeah. Uh, my friend Wes Nisker, who's another Dharma teacher out here in the Bay Area, although he gets around as well. Um, we've worked together on music, and he has a song called "Smile Like a Buddha." And it's kind of funny. It's but really lovely. Yeah, it's a practice that Thich Nhat Hanh teaches. Um, and it's one that I often teach in a more structured way on retreats and at workshops, is to do phrases where you say smile, release as you're practicing. And it is interesting. I know this wasn't our subject, but it really doesn't matter. It's all Dharma, but because it is, in a way, the subject of living kindness. That we see these kind of studies that show that actually smiling, um, releases endorphins in the body, and I find it curious. I mean, when I was a kid. I remember walking down the street as like an 8-year-old, and some teenage girls walked by and said, "Oh, why don't you smile? You're frowning," and of course I just sneered even harder then. And I, and I, and in fact, I am the type of person who kind of rebels at the idea of, "Oh, why don't you smile?" So, and I learned this practice a long time ago, back in the '80s, and somehow I was able to accept it and not kind of think, "Oh, that's cheesy," "that's phony." Like, "Oh, just think positive," and I'm not sure why that is, but uh, it's become actually a regular practice for me, even outside of sitting, where if I'm walking on the street and I feel kind of like a heaviness, sometimes I'll just kind of, and it's partly kind of bringing the body up too, but just kind of smile a little bit. And it is kind of an acknowledgement that our mind state is, to some extent, um, our own responsibility. That, I mean, to some extent, it's not. We can't control our minds uh, to the to real absolute degree, but I know I struggled. I've struggled with depression, uh, and and I always felt that I didn't have any control over that. And one of the things that really helped me to overcome depression was kind of realizing that I did have some influence over my mind states. And of course, that's what mindfulness practice introduces us to, in a way that it introduces us to our own mind. We sort of finally, "Oh, wow, that's what I've been walking around with all my life. I didn't realize that I was talking to myself." And then starting to see what you're saying to yourself, and uh, questioning it, basically. Uh, Bringing a wise skepticism to our own thinking is really one of the keys to dealing with negative mind states and negative mood states, is to be able to step away from it a little bit, and not. So that implies, and it actually really is, not taking it personally. So it's actually kind of a not self practice when we step back from thought and observe it as not being me, but just as being words and images in the mind, very conditioned ideas, and and then realize that we can actually sort of make other choices.
And I love what you're saying. I've found in my own practice that smile really helps me allow me to get that space from the thoughts and do the observation and do the
Yeah,
having some level of state shift that you're talking about, because it just doesn't have to be a huge smile. It can just be a gentle turning up of the
right.
lips.
Yeah,
And that, I've found, brings a little bit of a softening, a little bit of kindness to myself. And there's so much more space to be with whatever else is arising.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting too, as you're pointing to, is that, well, at least how I always thought that it only went one way, that in order to smile, I had to first be happy, you know. But then to discover that actually it's kind of like exercise. You know, you feel tired, so you think, oh, well, I can't exercise because I'm tired. But you know that if I get out and exercise, I'll get energy. So it's kind of the same thing with a smile. You know, I don't feel like smiling, but, and again, it's not something to use coercively, because I don't really like that, the forced kind of, oh, just be happy, but just kind of, you know, as you say, just a lightening up a little bit. I'm not into grinning, you know, but just kind of that little hmm. and and it's remarkable that it kind of, that, yeah, the movement of the mouth then changes. It doesn't just change your thinking, it changes your attitude, right? You kind of have this feeling like, at first it can be kind of like, oh yeah, you know, yeah, it is kind of just like this, it is like this. And it's kind of like when you, at first it can be almost an ironic smile, like, yeah, you know, and but then it kind of builds a little bit, or you know, that the feelings start to change with the attitude. So
Well, I think it's interesting what you mentioned about the response that we can have when someone tells us to have a certain, to be happy, or, and I think, that we're in the holiday times. I think that can happen a lot. You should be happy, you should be grateful, and that should gets us into trouble.
yeah, that's right. And I think that's another side of this, is how important it is to acknowledge grief and pain, and not try to push it under the table. And in fact, holiday season, it can be a really difficult time for people emotionally. It's very, you know, there, a lot of people have complicated memories mixed up with it. You know, people, you know, I have people who are close to me who've lost family members at during the holidays. You know, and then the holiday comes, and instead of it being a time you're thinking about all the good memories, you're remembering there's this sadness, and like you said, you kind of then feel like you're out of tune with the rest of the culture, and you kind of feel alienated by that. And I, you know, that's another reason to have a refuge in the Dharma. I think it's a time of year when people really need to uh, really go to their practice. And um, I mean, in the recovery world that I work with so much, it's a time when people go to a lot of meetings. You know, that it's a time, it's a real risk of relapse time. I always think of it, my my kind of analysis of what happens around Christmas for people who were raised with Christmas is that when you were a kid, you always wanted that pony, and Christmas Day you never get the pony. So you get something good, but it's never quite the right thing. And so Christmas, I think, as much as it's associated with something pleasant, it's also sort of associated with disappointment. Now, I don't know if that's a ridiculous thing to say, to posit, but I remember every year not getting what I wanted, and you know, and further, really, Christmas is all about more, and it's never enough, right? And what's sadder than the moment when you open the last present, you know, when you're done? It's like, so there's something inherently it's very much dukkha, you know. Christmas really has this Buddhist message in it that, you know, no matter how many presents you get, it's never enough. And, you know, even if you get the pony, it's going to probably take a crap on the living room floor, and that's going to really be a terrible, you know, thing. So it's Perhaps I digress.
I think it sounds very relevant. And I'm wondering though, for those who are listening, how do we bring our practice to be a refuge during this time where we are so bombarded by things and greed, even? Where does the practice and the refuge come in?
Well, I think it has to be very intentional, and it's a time of year. There's a lot of the teachings available, and if you're part of a community, or if there's a Dharma center that you're part of, it's really a time to make sure that you're going and sitting with your community. A lot of centers have retreats particularly over the New Year's holiday, which is a really great time to go for a retreat. I usually teach a day-long retreat at Spirit Rock Meditation Center right around the first of the year. This year it's going to be December 30th, and it's a day-long called Keep Coming Back, which is a phrase people use at the end of every 12-step meeting, keep coming back. And it's a day called Dharma Recovery and Renewal. So I think we have to be very intentional and seek out teachings, because they're not going to just come to us necessarily. And I think it's up to us to also sort of reflect. I mean, I think there's a balance to be kept. I mean, everybody has to find what works for them, but yeah, because it's very easy to get cynical about the materialism of holidays and just the sort of forced celebration. And I think it's important to be able to kind of distinguish between that and the sincere, feelings that people sort of are trying to cultivate at this point, to sort of reflect on. I mean, I certainly a time to reflect on your year, the past year and the coming year, and as well as, obviously Thanksgiving. I mean, think the spirit of Thanksgiving and all the spirits of holidays are positive if we can get to the actual spirit rather than what they're trying to sell us at the supermarket. And you take time. It's a great time to you go for a walk in the woods, or in the mountains, and just kind of let go of the busyness and consider what it is that you value in your life, what's important to you, what you value about connecting. So yeah, I don't have, some formula for it, but I think that to me the key, just as with Dharma practice, is to take the time, and it's so easy in busy times. Again, it's like, oh, how, if you have this list of people you have to shop for or something, or, putting on a party, we can get so caught up in all of that, which is fine. We get caught up, but then to just make sure that we make space, whether it's for sitting or, being with the community or being on your own in nature. It's really about time. And that's, I mean, the number one problem people have just with daily meditation practice is time, is making time. And I don't like the term finding time. I mean, we don't find or make time, but in terms of the practical circumstance, we have to make the time. And that I think, if there's time and space and quiet, reflection is a natural thing. I have to say, we promised people I was going to talk about living kindness, and we're probably like running out of time already. So, as the title makes clear, the book is playing with the idea of loving kindness and trying to expand on that. And it's because I felt for a long time that the Buddhist teaching on loving kindness was trivialized, at least in the way it's sort of marketed in the Buddhist world, that it's sort of suggested that it's some kind of a feel-good, instant gratification practice, and that you should just love everybody and be totally open
Mhm.
and that and it sort of misses the mark, I think, in terms of what the Buddha was really saying. And that I really not to get into everything that the book is about, but that I think it's really because loving kindness and living kindness are so integral to our happiness, and to the and to really the world, and the world we live in today. I think it's really important to look at what the Buddha said and try to take what he said into our lives. And what I find, the book goes into a lot of traditional suttas, and one of the main things that comes out of that is that the Buddha essentially says, even more than trying to love everybody, if you can just not hate anybody, you're achieving just as much. That the implication is that if we let go of hate, that love naturally arises. And I would say that in a way, it's easier to kind of have this sort of loving kind of meditative state than it is to actually let go of the resentments that arise every time we, pick up the newspaper or get stuck in traffic, or all the daily aggravations, and the further aggravations that we see, poisoning our culture. So just this idea of practicing living kindness, and as the Buddha says, non-ill will, I think is really, really important. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring out in this book, as well as kind of going through a lot of the elements of the loving kindness practice that, again, I feel are sort of underestimated, or uh, under discussed. I guess that that loving kindness is tied in directly with mindfulness. That loving kindness is a concentration practice. That loving kindness is an antidote to the five hindrances. That loving kindness is an antidote to fear, and all of that uh, is really about expanding our understanding of that. And yeah, as you said, I think, I don't know if you said it after we started recording or before, but that that's that idea of living kindness really also fits with the idea of holidays that are about, you know, everything from Thanksgiving to love and to sharing and all of that. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that maybe as a final thing.
Oh, thank you. I think um, one of the key things that you were saying that really stuck out to me was um, when you were really phrasing it as the practice of loving kindness. It's not that, flip of the switch or that,
Yeah.
great feeling. It's a practice.
Yeah, and a practice implies failure.
Mm.
If we're practicing something, it's because we haven't perfected it, which means we still fail at it, which is exactly what happens with loving kindness, right? And if we beat ourselves up for that, rather than just observing with mindfulness, oh, there I go again. Oh, that's a resentment, that's anger, and observe that and try to let it go and come back to our, you know, fundamental intention to be caring. That's how we cultivate it as a practice.
Thank you so much for talking with me today and sharing these practices with everyone who is tuning in from home. I'm really grateful. Southern Dharma is really grateful. We wouldn't exist without all of our teachers, all of our students. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's really great to talk to you.
Thank
This
you.
is a great idea. I really appreciate your energy and bringing this, modern technology to the ancient Dharma teaching up on that ancient mountain.